Nibiru and the history of the Anunnaki visitors, a summary of theories. I just want to open by reminding everyone that we did read articles concerning ancient Greek texts telling us that the gods of Olympus were actually extraterrestrials. Even the Atlanteans had extraterrestrial roots, and their technology came from them. Now, who were these Anunnaki and visitors from Nibiru, Planet X? As world events continue to unfold, more will witness the ugliness of predominance of such behavior, bullying behavior, rulers of the stronger nations forcing will upon the weaker nations. Now the history is repeating itself again. There was once a super race of aliens known to the ancient people of the earth as the Anunnaki, and for many reasons the Anunnaki have been reduced in power today. The race of beings thrived on conquest and enslavement of those who were under them. So this is the author's account of the story of Nibiru and the Anunnaki. In recent years, there have been many speculative writings about Planet X, which is also known as Planet Nibiru. Most of these writings based somewhat on Zecharia Sitchin's book, The 12th Planet. Sitchin, like Velikovsky and Darwin, used his perspective theories to support his claims. A question arises, is Nibiru real? The answer to that is a resounding yes. There are those who believe that the Anunnaki of Nibiru are coming back to Earth soon. They believe that Planet X is going to pass Earth, and it has a 3,600-year orbit around our sun. Such believers are terrified of the consequences that a close pass by Nibiru might bring, and they fear this will cause earthquakes, tidal waves, severe flooding, food shortages due to climatic conditions, diseases, meteor firestorms, volcanic eruptions, and the like, and they're afraid that this will result in great catastrophe, infliction of loss of life on Earth. Planet Nibiru, as is known by many names, such as Planet X, the 12th planet, Marduk, various cultures, although Nibiru has been called the 12th planet, technically it is not a planet of our solar system. I support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. So it's not a planet from our solar system. In fact, it's a planet from another solar system, and the star that was the sun of its solar system has been extinguished. Nibiru was never visible from the Earth, but the star which was the center of Nibiru's solar system was visible in the skies from Earth. The orbiting pattern of Nibiru gives the Anunnaki the advantage of having a mobile observatory from which they could observe and investigate many other planets near its orbit. The early people named Planet X as Nibiru in Sumeria and Marduk in Babylonia. It's been said that the ancient Mesopotamians believed that Nibiru was the 12th planet in our solar system, and that it was heaven where the gods resided and came from. In other words, as we said before, we referred to the ancient gods of Olympus by the ancient Greeks, and they claimed that they were extraterrestrials from the skies. Now, Nibirians, the people of Nibiru, are often referred to as Anunnaki, Nephilim, Elohim plural for gods, Mardukians, and I'll refer, the author says here, to them as Anunnaki, as this is what the general population was known as by Sumerians and by those at the present time. But they were Nephilim, okay? The word Anunnaki literally means those who came from heaven to earth. In the Old Testament, these heavenly quote-unquote visitors were called Anakim. They were Nephilim. Now, Nibiru was populated by a reptilian super race and governed by elite aristocracy known as the Nephilim, in Hebrew, which means they who came down from the heavens to earth. The Anunnaki were one of the many technologically advanced alien races at that time. In fact, their civilization was advanced far beyond most others of their time. The Anunnaki called their home star Zaos, Z-A-A-O-S. Now, the Anunnaki are a belligerent and conquering race. They are fierce, evil, lustful, incestuous, bloodthirsty, deceitful, jealous, and domineering. They are also carnivorous and are often cannibalistic. They also demanded human sacrifices and from those who they conquered from and from their own kind whom they enslaved. So if you imagine the worst characteristics you can conceive in Satan, you'll well have concocted an impression of the Anunnaki. They specialize in mind control. They also nearly perfected economic control with the development of money and the usury system. They conducted extensive genetic engineering and have genetically engineered, among other things, super reptilian race with which the Anunnaki called the Ducaz, D-U-C-A-Z. The Ducaz are used for conquering and controlling the Nibirian population and those of other conquered races. Thus, the Ducaz are reptilians. There are different types of reptilians amongst them. Their master, the Anunnaki Elite, are not the Ducaz. Like anything associated with the Anunnaki, there is a rigid, inequitable, and regimented class structure among the Ducaz. The reptilians or Ducaz were sent by their masters, quote unquote, the Nephilim or Elohim, to fight in wars with other alien races and to serve as their spies, bodyguards, and police force. There are many factions among the Anunnaki. One of the most bitter enemies of the Ducaz call themselves the Purse Sires, a group of aliens for which I coined the word vulturites many years ago. They are called vulturites not because they look like vultures, as some have claimed. In fact, they don't look at all like them. There are very apt reasons why I call them vulturites, which I will go into in the next discussion. I will not go to in this discussion, he says. Ironically, the Purse Sires are just a different faction of the Anunnaki race. However, the Ducaz reptilians and the Purse Sires vulturites have always been bitter enemies even to this day. The descendants of these two groups are now on Earth vying for supremacy of the world. The author says here, many of these are currently in political, financial, scientific, religious, legal, medical, especially in blood banks, entertainment, military, agrarian, and or commercial positions, and also in the sex industry. Most of them aliens are not consciously aware of their alien origins. The Anunnaki are flesh and blood biological beings with abounding pride, arrogance, uncontrollable urges for illicit relations. They may have great appetite for conquest and control. This warlike race has an insatiable thirst for control of other beings and domination over other races and less privileged classes of the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki developed and imposed complex, oppressive caste and gender systems. They are misogynist. That was why they eliminated the worship of Divine Mother, early people on the earth, whom they conquered when they arrived. There was so much resistance to the elimination of the worship of the quote-unquote Divine Mother that the Anunnaki set up replacement mothers for various cultures, such as the Earth Mother, Mother Nature, and thereafter further corrupted the Divine Mother's image by falsely attributing her with vengeance and lustful and jealous qualities. The interpretation of Kali is one of those false attributes. Due to a great collision, the Earth and the planets and moon of our solar system were severely affected. Nibiru too suffered great damage as a result of the celestial collision, and this caused the Anunnaki to come to Earth in search of permanent home. They did not come to search for physical gold, as Sitchin hypothesizes. Oddly, gold is not a native mineral to Earth, so the Anunnaki would not be expecting it on Earth. Nor did they come to Earth to mine for gold and to make a shield to protect their ailing atmospheric conditions on Nibiru. If they did not succeed in saving their planet because their planet was destroyed. What appears in space is really the shadow of Nibiru many light years away. However, the Anunnaki were delighted to find gold on Earth because they used it for ornamentation. They also imported many slaves to mine the gold, and they used many of the Anunnaki lower classes to do the same. Since their home Nibiru was destroyed, the Anunnaki Elite and their cadre of attendants were forced to become transient, with the majority of them living in a huge spacecraft like a city that orbited the Earth. By then, the other Anunnaki races were already placed in different worlds that they had conquered, including Earth, Mars, and the rest of our solar system. They were also interspersed throughout the Orion Pleiadian system, and thus it can be seen that the Anunnaki were extraordinarily powerful and they were feared by many. The Anunnaki elite and those who were permitted to travel moved from the orbiting spacecraft and smaller shuttlecrafts to visit Earth below. They also sent freighter-class crafts to Earth for commercial and military purposes. Interplanetary slave trade was prevalent, lucrative. It's no wonder that the ancient people feared their gods, whom they claimed lived in the sky. The majority of the Earthlings now are genetically and symbolically part of the off-planet civilization of the Anunnaki. You'll see why I say that as the story unfolds. The Anunnaki Elite of Nibiru are genetic manipulators who know how to create artificial life forms. In their arrogance, they tried to play God. Their highly advanced technology and their overbearing size and strength made them nearly invincible in the eyes of the early people. Thus, the Anunnaki Elite were seen and worshipped as gods by them. The Anunnaki Elite have sometimes been referred to as the Nordics or Blondes. They're tall, robust, full of vigor, athletic, and usually a fair complexion. Their symbol of status and power is the winged disc that represents their home star, Zaos. These Anunnaki Elite were later known as Elohim and Nephilim. These evil Elohim must not be confused with the divine Elohim of the true creation. The Anunnaki Elite, the Nephilim, created many religions so that they could be worshipped as gods. This gives them great satisfaction. The Anunnaki developed religions by corrupting any spirituality they observed in the indigenous people of the earth. They employed religions as a powerful means of controlling the indigenous people. Different religions were set up with doctrines in direct opposition to one another in order to breed disharmony, distrust, confusion, war, and arrogance. The Anunnaki planted hybrids from other worlds on Earth when they came, and not long after their arrival they began to spread themselves as far as wide as they could, and took control of sections of the planet by genetic engineering. They forced the indigenous people out of their own establishments and forced them into total submission. They used the indigenous people for controlled experiments of biological breeding. Today, there are aliens who abduct Earthlings for cloning, and also they mutilate animals. Most of these abductions and assaults carried out by Anunnaki remnants, a term I use to indicate those Anunnaki who were stranded on Earth. And as mentioned earlier, the Anunnaki Elite conquered and enslaved the primitive people who were already residing on Earth. Some claim that they were hybrid from Nibiru, which maliciously implies that they were Anunnaki. It's patently false that Christian saints, avatars of light, who incarnated here to remind and reawaken sleeping divine beings of their true divine origin, is false. Now, in Genesis 6:2-4, we're talking about the Genesis giants now, it's recorded by the Anunnaki who wrote most of the Old Testament that the sons of God, the Anunnaki males, saw the daughters of men that they were fair. In developing this doctrine, the Anunnaki were trying to show that the sons of God were lured to Earth and corrupted by the indigenous women of Earth. In fact, the women of Earth that at that time were purer than the males, and they were revered as the males because Earthling spirituality still retained closeness to the Divine Mother. The Anunnaki had to twist this to make it appear that the women were a gender that could not be trusted, that they must be oppressed by the males. The sons of God abused and horribly mistreated the indigenous women of the earth. And now the Anunnaki chauvinism caused women to be subjugated to men and treated as their footstools. In Isaiah 66:1, is found the saying, "Thus the Lord said, the heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool." Ephesians 5:22, Paul, who wrote, "Wives, submit yourself unto your husbands, as unto the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject to God, to Christ, so let the wives be there to their own husbands in everything. So therefore, according to the teachings, wives are the footstools, husbands are the thrones. In one usurping stroke, Paul, on behalf of Anunnaki, subordinated all Christian women to an inferior status. Now, an evidence that the Anunnaki authored much of these ancient texts, also corrupted it. Let us consider how they have manipulated writings of the past. So yet again, the Anunnaki supposedly corrupted the sayings where one is told that one must be obedient, as a nations which, these cannot be the words of a true God of love. These are the words of Demiurge's chief agents, the Anunnaki. There are only 3 other occasions where the word be obedient appears in the Bible, and all these are attributed to Paul. 2 Corinthians 2:9, Paul directs his followers to be obedient in all things. Paul's, not Jesus's, right? Ephesians 6:5 reads, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and singleness of your heart, as to unto Christ. Is not this awful? Now, the creation myths throughout the world are similar in their major thrusts. Why is this so? It's because the various creation myths are spread by the Anunnaki as they migrate around the world. The religions set up by Anunnaki to control, manipulate populations, incorporated the various creation myths, and these religions are not based upon love, they're based on fear. Wherever the Anunnaki went and conquered, they consolidated people into densely populated communities so they could better force the people to work for them and control them, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, economically, as slaves. They control by installing fear, keeping people ignorant. The Anunnaki introduced the adornment of the body with jewelry. They also promoted very expensive tastes that would force people into economic slavery. They introduced polygamy, incest, and other things which are hallmarks of the Anunnaki. Such traits are noted in various cultures, including ancient Egyptian royalty and the patriarchs of the Old Testament who followed the precepts ordered by, these are, of course, not to be done. Now, in many senses, we in this technologically advanced age are slaves to modern commodities. The Anunnaki first visited Earth, it says here, about 500,000 years ago. By then, they have already conquered the Pleiades and Mars and many other worlds. And after some trials, the first wave of successful genetic engineering occurred on Earth about 300,000 years ago. The Anunnaki introduced many alien races, and they had conquered and implanted them on Earth. And they also kidnapped a special race called the race of women and brought them to Earth. The race of women suffered greatly under the suppression and abuse of the Anunnaki, and various alien races from other worlds were brought to Earth to be used as slaves by Anunnaki. And through genetic engineering, they made physically inferior humans in stature, strength, and speed. And even in occupations where strength and speed are irrelevant, such as the clergy, law, medicine, politics, commerce, science, etc., women are greatly disadvantaged and obstructed from participating even to this day. Now, the advanced civilization of Sumeria did not evolve over many, many thousands of years. Instead, it was dressed up almost instantly by the introduction of many facets of civilization by Anunnaki, including legal system, social order, economic models, religious science, mathematics, weights and measures, writing, literature, music, performing arts, cosmology, painting, sculpture, astronomy, astrology, medicine and animal husbandry, domestication of plants, homeopathy, culinary arts, skills, art, entertainment, etc. Sumeria became a civilization that other backward societies envied and feared. About 35,000 years ago, the Cro-Magnon man took over the earth from the Neanderthal man. The Anunnaki Elite had done away with the entire Neanderthal population after they finished using Neanderthals as specimens for genetic experiments. Homo sapiens were the result of the second wave of genetic engineering, and the second wave allowed the Homo sapiens to procreate with the civilian Anunnaki. As time went, by, things got out of control, with monstrosities abounding and many half-human, half-beasts who were running amok. In the heyday of Atlantis, there was space travel for the privileged classes. Teleportation was also common in those days for the privileged classes. As the Atlantean quote-unquote slaves became more and more advanced, they began to disobey their gods, the Anunnaki Elite, who were Nephilim, of course. This concerned their masters, thus a decision was made by them to destroy Atlantis. Some of the Anunnaki Elite and their chosen attendants fled the Earth in huge spacecraft and went to other planets, such as Mars, and even to other systems. Most of the Anunnaki were left behind. Upon fleeing the Earth, the Anunnaki Elite blew up Atlantis and destroyed it, home to kill all of the remaining Anunnaki and the rest of the inhabitants. However, some of the Anunnaki slaves discovered the plans of the Anunnaki Elite to destroy Atlantis, as some of the slaves were able to escape the destruction, taking with them some of the knowledge, artifacts, technology, writings, weapons, and cultures of Atlantis to various parts of the Earth. And this goes along with what we have read in the Emerald Tablets written by Thoth the Atlantean. After the destruction of Atlantis, the third wave of genetic engineering performed by the higher classes Anunnaki remnant took place about 20,000 years ago. One group of Anunnaki remnants built the pyramids by employing massive amounts of forced human labor and advanced technology, and the sites were used as launching pads for spacecraft for the privileged classes of the Anunnaki remnants. The early Egyptians who built the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx were also Anunnaki remnants from Atlantis, whom the Anunnaki Elite had intended to annihilate when they destroyed Atlantis. When they returned to Earth after destroying Atlantis, they saw Anunnaki remnant cultures. The rulers and kings of various cultures were usually appointed by the Anunnaki Elite, and when the Anunnaki Elite fled and the Anunnaki remnants took over, the remnants adopted this pattern of appointing kingships. This is why many cultures, including the Chinese, Japanese, Egyptian, and Western European, followed the order of the divine right of kings. Thousands of years ago, when the Anunnaki Elite returned to Earth planning to restart their dominion on Earth, they were surprised to find Anunnaki remnant cultures blossoming. This concerned them greatly, and they thought they were losing control of the Earth to other former slaves. In desperation, the Anunnaki Elite set up retaking control of the Earth. They did this by causing a deluge which catastrophically destroyed almost all evidence of the former cultures. Only the huge monuments such as the Sphinx, pyramids, ziggurats, etc. survived the flood. Nearly all the huge monuments around the world were created at the behest of the Anunnaki Elite, or later, the Anunnaki remnants. Fearful that they would be Anunnaki remnants left after the deluge who could rapidly reconstruct the culture, especially in Egypt, the Anunnaki Elite took the tremendous risk of selecting an area of the Earth onto which they could instantaneously deposit a culture that would be far superior to that of any tribe on Earth. This emergency plan was executed in Sumeria. Sumeria developed almost instantaneously because of the extremely urgent situation. The Anunnaki Elite were losing influence over Earth to the Anunnaki remnants of Atlantis, who had escaped, among other places, to Egypt and to the Americas. These Anunnaki remnants were developing in the Egypt, Aztecan, Mayan, and Inca cultures and could attain dominance if left to their own devices. Therefore, the Anunnaki Elite took the extreme risky decision to create a superculture complete with written language and records in Sumeria. At this point, the most powerful of the Attis of the Light interceded and captured a great number of the Anunnaki Elite. Many of the Anunnaki Elite fled the Earth yet again in their spacecrafts and returned to Orion and the Pleiades systems. These once proud and mighty Anunnaki Elite are now nothing but fugitives cowering and hiding. The Genesis story used to control people, force them into worship of Anunnaki. There were already various groups of races of aliens and earthlings on Earth when the Anunnaki Elite first took control of the portion of Earth. There were battles among the various groups for supremacy, but the Anunnaki Elite were too powerful for them. The Sumerian tablets record events, so-called origins of man creation, that were really events of the beginning of the Anunnaki Elite's latest colonization of Earth. The conquerors themselves wrote the tablets. Thus, what was recorded on the tablets by the Sumerians, dictated by their so-called gods, was self-serving. Through past experience, the Anunnaki had seen how religions could control populations of various worlds. This is an important tool that they use for control. The Sumerian texts, there was mention of people of the Shem, meaning spaceship. The Anunnaki were the people of the Shem, and they came down to Earth and copulated with primitive Earthlings, and this is recorded in the Genesis story. The Anunnaki Elite also started a new, highly advanced culture in Babylon. As always, they destroyed cultures and murdered populations whenever they get out of hand. Then they restart elsewhere. So today the Anunnaki remnants are planning to reestablish the majesty bygone days when Anunnaki Elite had a complete tyranny over Earth. Now, the ones chosen to continue their new civilization are humans and clones who've specially chosen characteristics for blind obedience. They think their masters will once again be the literal gods of the world. And they are now among us. The Anunnaki on Earth waiting reinforcements from their masters. The Anunnaki Elite who escaped temporarily to other solar systems. So basically this is what the recap is all about. Already there are those who are so deluded by the programming of Anunnaki remnants that they are saying things like the Earth is a prison, but it can be turned into a paradise. The Anunnaki have incarnated into human form. Some are also in the astral, and the Anunnaki have great influence over the astral world also. Many messages channeled today are deceitful messages from the Anunnaki. So I hope you find this interesting, this unbended reality. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.